Hi, everyone. Welcome to our faculty showcase, RewirED 2014. Thank you all for coming. I'm Michael Senemo. I'm an educational technologist here at the Center for New Media, and I'm happy that you're all here. I just wanted to say how happy I am and proud to be a part of this and watching faculty work with us and what they're producing. It's really where I want to be as far as what I do with my career. So what I've also noticed as I watched RewirED evolve is that it really takes a community of people. It takes faculty, it takes technologists, it takes designers and students and administrators all sort of working together, talking with each other, experimenting together. So I think that RewirED is a safe place for us to do that together. And I saw that in the wiki that we've created. This is our RewirED community wiki. And you see here that we have over 50 participants who are adding the things that they're doing. They're either telling us what they're interested in. For example, Reyes has sort of outlined her goals and objectives so other participants can see what she's interested in and working on and the tools that she'd like to use. But other faculty are using it differently. For instance, some people are using it sort of experimentally. So Chanel is really trying to take what she's learning in the RewirED series, and she's experimenting. She wanted to know more about video creation, so she came to our workshop, and now she's sort of creating these videos. But she also liked this tool, present.me, so she wanted to try it. She experimented with it, but at the same time, she shared it with us. So let's see if this comes up. I'll get back to that one. Also, just want to show you real quick. Some people have been using tools to flip their classroom, like Jessica, for example. She flipped her classroom by using a tool called TED-Ed. This actually was used in her class. She replaced one of her live classes with this video here, and then a place for them to answer a question before class, and then other resources. And she used this in replacement of her class once for one session. But more importantly, she shared it with us as she shared her Prezi presentation with us. So thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Natasha, for sharing those materials with us. We also have a lot of resources in here. So all the presentations that we've done are right in the wiki. So I'll start here with our presentation. This is our last week showing the work, and just want to mention that we'd like to thank all of you who have come to any of our sessions, but for those of you who have come to 4 or more, we have a gift for you. Thank you very much for attending. Your presence has been invaluable. Thank you for participating. These are the people who have come to 4 or more. I think we have 18 people. That's awesome. Again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the book we selected for you. And also, thank you to my colleagues, my ET brothers and sisters who sort of helped put this together. They brought their expertise, their ideas, their energy, and they took each of them took one of these weeks and really made it their own. So thank you, ETs, for doing that. And so what we're really here today to showcase are people who have worked and designed things in the theme of blended learning, which is really to figure out what the best face-to-face part of your class is, the best technology that could complement that, and sort of blend them together in a very unique environment, suited to you, your needs, your class size, your subject matter, and that's why we're here. What we're not trying to do is replace any faculty. We're not trying to create things that are really complicated to use. We're really trying to find something that will empower you to give you the free time to do and teach the way you want to teach. If you look at the considerations that we look at, you see that the first one is always thinking backwards, starting with the goals and objectives that you have as a faculty. So we always start our conversation with, what do you want your students to be able to do? And faculty come back with these kind of answers, and we just start from there. So enough of me talking. What we have today are some stories that we'd like to share, because once you have the goal and then you have your brainstorming and your technology and the pedagogy, how are you going to assess it? How are you going to iterate it? It all sort of comes together and it's a story. And we have 4 great faculty who have come today to share their stories with us. And we'll come up one by one. And the first person that we'd like to bring up is Professor Brent Stockwell, who is doing so many things in his biochemistry class. He's creating videos, but he's also freeing up time for group learning, project-based learning, immediate feedback, and a whole lot more. So, Professor Stockwell, thank you for sharing this.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for having me. It's really been great to work with CCNMTL. Everything I'm going to tell you, I feel like we've really made a lot of great changes in my course over the last 2 years. Oh, you need a mic or something?
Could you mind just taking that out and walking with it? Great.
Is that good? So I feel like all the changes we've made in my course over the last 2 years, which have really been terrific, certainly wouldn't be possible without the help of Michael and the whole CCNMTL team. It's really made a huge difference for me. So I want to just first begin by thanking them for all their hard work. So I want to tell you about what we've been doing this year in biochemistry. Now, let me start with the goals of the presentation. What am I hoping that you come away with? First, I hope that you'll be able to describe the recent innovations in teaching large science courses like biochemistry. And then a little more ambitiously, I'm hoping that by the end, you would be able to select the most appropriate tool, technology, to address a particular learning challenge. And we're going to try to do that in an active way. So we'll see how that goes. So why do we want to change at all? What's wrong with the way things are? Well, if you look at science education across the country and really around the globe, there are a number of serious problems that have been identified in reports of National Academy of Sciences and at many different levels in terms of inability to get citizens to engage in analytical thinking, especially many politicians, for example. Poor retention of lecture material that's presented. I know I experienced that. I go to a lecture and then walk out. I say, it was really great, but I don't actually remember anything that they said. And many students leave science, particularly women and underrepresented minorities, because they find it kind of dull and competitive and it's not really stimulating their interest. So how can we change that paradigm and make science more accessible to everybody? Particularly, can we use some of these new technologies at Columbia to innovate in the way that we teach science? So the idea was to take the course that I teach, which is biochemistry. It's about 180 undergraduates from different majors, Columbia, engineering, Barnard, many pre-medical or pre-health students, and see whether we could come up with a better way to teach these students. And I really want to highlight Michael's contributions. He meets with me practically every week and discusses new ideas and how we improve what we're doing. So it's all been a great collaboration. Okay, so let me just go through a few problems that I was facing over the last 8-9 years in the course, and then what are the changes we made to address these problems. Okay, so the first problem is a lot of students would come to class unprepared. In other words, they wouldn't do the reading, the textbook reading. And so then in class, it can't really build upon that material and get to a deeper level of understanding. I just got to go back over the basic material that I assigned. So how do we address that? What we decided to do was have online quizzes and coursework that the students would have to take. It's due at the beginning of class for every class, and to make sure that they do the preparation material before they get to class. And this has actually made a big difference. Now the students really do come in ready to build upon that material or to clarify the questions that they had about it. Second is that textbooks are just not that exciting. I mean, you're teaching a set of facts. That's not really what science is. Science is about the questions, the discovery. How do you know when something is true or not? So we decided to move beyond that and just introduce actual research papers and have people read papers and discuss them as opposed to going with the traditional textbook approach. And that allowed us to actually get in, analyze data. What does it mean? What if it were something different? What's the conclusion? Do you believe the conclusion? Is it supported by the data? And then also to bring the researchers to life involved in doing the research. You know, anyone can be a scientist. It's not sort of the traditional view of what a scientist looks like. Okay, and then the third problem we faced was that it's quite difficult for students to maintain focus for 75 minutes. And many studies have looked at this. Attention starts to wane after maybe 10 minutes or so into a lecture. Maybe some of your attention is waning now. So, okay, that's a problem. Another problem, number 4, related to that, is that during a lecture, you don't really know, you can't test your understanding. You'd like to know how well are you assimilating that information and retaining it. So you want some kind of formative, active assessment of your ability to understand that material, of your learning. So we thought that audience response systems would allow us to solve both of those problems, and attention and formative assessment, where students can use any kind of web-enabled device. So we use a system this year called Learning Catalytics, provided by Pearson. It's an online system, so they can use a cell phone or a tablet, iPad, or a laptop. They go to the website, they have their login, same one every time, and then I deliver the questions to them on the website, and it shows up on their device, and then they give me their response. And so basically, what I found is that if you give them very simple questions, they kind of get bored by this, but what they really want are these challenging questions that require that they apply the information to a different context than the way you explained it. And they sort of struggle with that, they think about it, they discuss it with their neighbors and groups, and then they come back and give you their answer. And sometimes they all get it right and you move on, and sometimes they don't get it right, and that's a good time to discuss further, have some additional teaching, and try to figure out how you can explain this idea better. So this concept has been really made their attention much more focused throughout the lecture, throughout the class, and also allowed me to see what they're understanding. Now, the 5th problem is that this is a big problem. It's hard to get to a very sort of high level of understanding. There's this concept, I don't know how many people are, maybe a show of hands, how many people are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? A bunch of people? Okay, good. So you know that it's difficult to get to these higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and you're just giving a lecture. So how can we stimulate students to be able to do that? So the idea was that if they're actually working on complex problems that apply the information to a difficult situation, they're synthesizing, they're breaking down, they're doing these higher level Bloom's activities, then you would be able to get to that in class. So what we did is we decided this year to have all the students divided into teams. They had the same teams throughout the semester, teams of 4 students. And then at every class, the last 20 minutes of class, they would break into their teams. I would give them a set of problems, a few hard, challenging problems to work on. And they would just sit there and struggle with these problems while I circulated with the teaching assistants, and we would discuss with them what were the misconceptions. And I learned a tremendous amount in doing that about where I had gone wrong in explaining things. They often had the same misinterpretations or misconceptions about the material, and I'd try to clarify for them in real time. Now, how do you have time to do that? That's where the idea of a quasi-flipped or blended class comes in, where we could make videos and provide some of the simpler content to students in advance of the class, and that freed up time to do these group problems at the end of class. So I used ScreenFlow to film the videos, and then with the assistance of Therese in the back here to edit them into videos that could be provided to the students in advance, and then they'd take a quiz on that before class, and then we'd have time to build on that in class. Okay, now here I actually want to show you Stephanie's group and CCNMTL and Therese were able to put together a video about my course, which I thought you'd enjoy watching. So let's see, which shows some of these things in action. Okay, welcome to Biochemistry. Come on in, everybody. Now, in terms of specific skills, I would hope that at the end of the course, you could diagram major metabolic pathways. There will be, before every class, a homework in coursework. So there'll be a quiz. There is no required textbook for the course. How well do you understand the concepts of pH and pKa? This is what we're going to talk about in the last part of the class here today. Okay, let's take a look. So pretty well, about half the people would say well, and then there's a distribution, maybe some people a little bit less familiar with pH. So we're going to see if we can have any impact on that in the next few minutes. There's a little bit I said of protons in water, 10 to the negative 7. We can just ignore that because it's so much less. In order to do this, everyone needs to form a group of 3. Go sit with them, and we're going to hand out all the materials you need to do your experiment. Did you make all 3 measurements?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you calculate all the answers?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, what was the change out of 10-fold dilution
From the first one.
from the first one?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so-
And think about this one. Could you calculate that difference a little more precisely? Yeah. Try to calculate what you think it should be. I mean, you measured it.
Yeah.
But what should it be theoretically if you had a 2-fold change?
Oh, you want us to, use the information?
So I think we saw some significant shift. Now 20% of the people who responded really understand very well, where nobody did before. And then there's a shift in this direction. So please watch the videos and take the quiz before Thursday's class. I look forward to seeing everybody then. Thank you.
So I understood most of the things that you talked about.
Now we're going to do an experiment. I've told you about some different tools that you might find to be useful in teaching. Here's a problem we didn't talk about. Students come to class with a heterogeneity, different levels of background knowledge for the material, maybe from other courses, from their retention of the reading. So which of the tools that I mentioned do you think would be best suited to deal with the problem of heterogeneity in background knowledge? So you take out your cell phone, send a text to the number 22333, and the content of your text is going to be one of these 5 keywords. If you think the solution to the problem of heterogeneity of background knowledge is online quizzes, then you would put in 1 quiz as your keyword. Again, you're texting that to the number 22333. If you think reading research papers is the answer, you'd use 2 quiz. If you think live audience response, so polling is the answer, you'd put in 3 quiz. Team problem solving in class, you'd put in 4 quiz. And if you think making videos would be the solution, you'd put in 5 quiz. So I'll give you another 10 or 15 seconds to put in your votes. Okay, so I see a number of people are voting for the team problem solving. What about, does someone want to defend videos? What's your rationale for choosing videos? How would videos address that problem? Anyone who voted for videos? Yeah?
I would say that students can watch videos more than once if they don't understand it, or if they do understand it, they can skip pretty quickly through a video. So that would even out the playing field in terms of when they come to class, what they know.
Right, that's a great idea. And actually, a lot of students told me they did watch the videos over and over again and really pour through them, and they appreciated having them. And yeah, the other thing you could do, and part of my proposal for next year, is to make supplemental videos that try to address some of the gaps in background knowledge. But I also did think that team learning would allow students in real time to share the background information that they have, so sort of fill in the gaps for each of them. Okay, so I think in the interest of time, we'll move on. I'll mention just a couple more things. What are we going to try to do in the future? So one thing I'd like to do is introduce more of the discovery process itself, so more of these kind of experiments that you saw in the video and simulations, perhaps. And then, very importantly, analyze data to see how effective these different methods are. So in that regard, to that last point, we're actually running, and plan to do another one next year, a randomized controlled trial where we're evaluating the impact of some of these changes on student learning. So the idea is that we filed this with the IRB at Columbia, so they have to approve this. The students all fill out informed consent. Then they're randomized into different groups. In the first study, they're randomized into 4 groups, and then they get 4 different educational intervention treatments. And then we give them a quiz, and then evaluate the impact. And so we can use this paradigm to look at different parameters. What is the impact of videos? What is the impact of active problem solving, of groups versus individual work? And we can say for these particular students and the kind of students that we deal with in biochemistry, which of these methods is actually most effective. So finally, I'll just summarize with, again, the basic ideas that students watch a video or read a paper before class, take an online quiz, use a device in class to answer questions individually, and then at the end of class, they break into teams and then answer these challenging questions. So I'm going to stop there and take any further questions we have.
How are you grading them?
Oh, what is the grading? So yeah, it's a good question. I found that giving more exams is actually better, so they don't wait and then cram right before the midterm or the final. So I actually had 3 exams and then a final, but then they also had these quizzes for homeworks. The in-class polling is actually graded a little bit for like a participation, and a little bit of the grade is if they get the question right, to kind of motivate them to try. And then the team problem solving, very important, is also graded. That's about 10 or 15% of the grade, because I want them to know that working in a team is an important skill, and that the answers they come up with there do factor into their grade.
Sounds like grade management is hard.
No, it's actually, you could do it all in coursework. So you just set it all up, and you can drop certain things, and it's all automated. So it's pretty easy to, once you get familiar with coursework. So was another question here? Yeah.
How long are the videos, and do you have any data about student viewing?
Yeah, good question. The videos, they're usually like 20 to 30 minutes. I didn't want to make them longer than that. I asked a lot of the students. I met with most of the students one-on-one in the course and got their feedback. And they said, actually, I thought maybe making shorter videos would be better, like 5-minute videos, and have a series of those. They said that wouldn't make a difference. They're happy with 20 to 30 minutes because they just sit down and do it, or they can stop it and come back to it. So that seems fine. In terms of the viewing, yeah, Michael was able to look up the statistics on viewing and showed those to me a number of times. And they were, pretty much as you would have expected, viewed at a rate that suggests virtually everyone was looking at them at least once, and then a number of people were viewing them multiple times. So, yeah, maybe one more question, is that? Yeah. Yeah. I was amazed, I have to say, this is anecdotal, but the questions they were coming up with now in office hours and in class were really at a much deeper level, like asking things that I hadn't thought about, making me realize different perspectives on different insights. So I feel like we did get to them, and we were able to go through these pretty challenging primary research papers, about 10 of them, and at a good level of depth. So I feel like this format really worked to do that, exactly that. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Stockwell. Okay, thank you, Professor Stockwell. Next we have, so Professor Stockwell is biochemistry. Next we have something completely different, a completely different blend. We have Dr. Hiie Sauma who teaches literature humanities here, and she has 2 sections, and she is really interested in getting her students to work together and become creative thinkers and innovators. So Hiie, thank you very much for sharing your story with us today. Just go if you want to go to the next, your next slide. And then if you
see.
click on it, it'll just open up the wiki.
I see. No, no.
I'm right here if you need.
Thank you,
Sure.
as always. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here, glad to be back this year also. So as Michael said, my name is Hiie Sauma, and I work in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. And this year I was teaching 2 sections of a course called Literature Humanities. And for those of you who are not familiar, this course is a year-long required course. So all the students who come to Columbia have to take it. And we start with Homer in the fall, and we end with Virginia Woolf in the spring. And it's a discussion-based course where we ask really big questions such as, what is love? What is wisdom? Can wisdom be taught? Can wisdom be learned? How is it different from knowledge? And for example, what is justice? How do we deal with the fact that there's so much violence in the Western canon? And is it possible to search for moments of peace in the literature that we're reading? So we look at all these questions through the particular texts that we're reading. Last year, I was inspired. I've been inspired for many years now by Michael Cinnamon, the other educational technologists that I have talked to and learned from. And last year, we came up with a project, Michael and I, where we divided the group. Last year I was teaching 1 section of Lit Hum. We divided the group into 5 smaller groups, and then each group had to come up with 40 lines of poetry, and we composed our modern day epic. Yeah? Oi. I went to the wrong place.
Yeah, you just go back and then just click on it, and
Yes.
it'll open up another browser.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you what this looked like. It was a collaborative work, and the students really had to learn how to follow one another's lead. And so they did all the artwork here themselves, and also you see there are links that we included later on, and when you open the links, you get to other materials, footnotes, other pages that open up, and also student self-reflective comments were included there. So that project was a great success. And this year, Michael and I, we got even more ambitious. And so we started planning for this next project already in the spring, and we decided to do a collaborative newsletter project. So what I want to do today with my time here is to basically talk to you about 2 things. The first is what motivated me to undertake this project and what my goals were. And then secondly, I just want to show you the amazing work that the students did, and I want to say a few words about what is particularly valuable or important about these projects that they came up with. So, my goals. I thought that I had a really unique opportunity this year because I had these 2 sections that work with the same material. Yeah? So I wanted to create synergy between these 2 sections. And I wanted to see if they could actually create something together without necessarily having met one another. And also if I wanted them to offer to one another an immediate sense of readership. I wanted them to become one another's immediate audiences. So that was my first goal. And then my second goal was to offer to the students an alternative space where they can think about and engage with the text and the ideas of the course. As you heard me mention earlier, we talk about these really big questions, yeah? And in my class, I always feel like, I know that my responsibility, first of all, is in front of these. I have to take into account the text, the particular text that we're reading in this class, yeah? But I feel like in order for the students to really understand something maybe deeper or more relevant to themselves about these big questions, they also maybe need to engage with these questions a little bit more broadly. And for that, to bring in the outside world, for that I don't have space and time for in my class. I really need to keep things contained and keep the discussion on the same page so that students don't go to all other kinds of directions. So I felt like the newsletter project offered the students a chance to explore these ideas from the works that we're reading and engage with the world, with the outside world a little bit, and bring in their own interests and reflect, maybe have a more personal kind of commentary on these texts. So that was my second goal. And then my third goal is to allow students to have a space where they can be creative. I just really value this very much. And by being creative, I don't mean that everybody who comes to take this class needs to start writing poetry or needs to do artwork if they're not artists. But what I mean by this is that I think it's really important to encourage creative kinds of thinking. So if the student's skill really is in writing really great, solid essays, there's possible to even look at this kind of more formal academic writing from a creative standpoint. So I wanted to show students that creative and critical thinking go together and one can lead to the other. And it's important for critical and academic thinkers, in my opinion, to also be a little creative sometimes, because that can lead to important ideas and projects. And then my fourth goal was to offer students a space and a chance to work collaboratively, because I think this is an important skill to have, and I think they need to start learning about this. And it's difficult. How to manage the time, how to actually get on the same page with your group members is a challenging task sometimes. So I wanted them to grapple with this. Okay. The process for this newsletter project was very straightforward, very minimal. My instructions were very minimal. I wrote up a handout where I described the project, and I told the students what I think makes this project valuable and worthwhile. And then I told them that I basically need two things from each group: a written component and a visual component. And both of these components had to somehow engage with the course materials and the text or the ideas. And then I gave suggestions as to what the visual component could be or what the written component could be. But that was it, yeah? I asked students for some feedback later on, and then for some students, for the majority of students, this was really liberating. They were like, oh, this is so great. I had a chance in an academic setting to really feel like I could do my own thing, like our group could really think outside the box. And then for some groups, this was the challenging part of the project. They felt like there needed to be more instructions. What were the expectations? And so my response to this was that it depends on one's individual skills and comfort levels also. That some people really like choreography and some people like free dance. And it's important sometimes to kind of know how to do both. And I said that for those people who wanted more instructions and expectations and everything, I told them that, prompts are there in your lives for some time, like the first year and then some years maybe following. But especially if you decide to stay in literary fields, let's say, there is a point when one really needs to learn how to come up with your own ideas, your own projects. So it's important to start learning how to do that. Okay, so let's look at the newsletter project. So I'm just going to click here. So this is what it looks like, yeah? We called it Litham Salon. And I'm just going to show you some, the pages here and say what students came up with. So for example, this one group, they went and interviewed a classics professor here at Columbia, somebody that they didn't know. And this was a really valuable project because it brought to the classroom a topic that we didn't have space or expertise for in the class, which was the question of translation. So they came up with great questions about translation, and they asked the professor to read an excerpt in Greek. And they also the students learned another thing that was very valuable, which was how to communicate with professors, with faculty, how to actually email and schedule an appointment and develop a professional sense of themselves. This project called Pride and Punishment, looks at some of the characters from the text that we read who were killed or who were punished, and the students imagined what these characters would have said about their punishment. So for example, the first little section here is the story of the Cyclops, who in the Odyssey was blinded by Odysseus. And so when you read this little section here, you see this is special to the Cyclops post. There's like an op-ed. It really makes you understand the text from a different perspective when it comes to this character. You feel like, well, maybe this Cyclops didn't deserve the punishment that he got. And maybe there's a way to look at some of the actions of Odysseus that we think are so witty and resourceful as a little bit problematic, yeah? And one of the students here, maybe I won't go there to show you this, but did all this artwork, cartoons, and different reflections visually. Yes. Yes, this is also a chance to show what Lucid Press does. Yes. Okay. How it scrolls, yes. Wait, how do I do this? Here. Wait, does this not scroll here?
You just go here.
All right, from there. Yes. Okay. Now this next one.
Like two fingers. You can just scroll with
Oh, I
two
see.
fingers like that.
I see. Things to learn. So this next one is a set of imaginary interviews. Yeah, so I had a group of students who were interested in some of these female characters that we see that are very prominent in the literature that we read, like Helen and Penelope, but they don't maybe get to speak as much in the text that we're reading. So they created some questions, and then they asked these questions from the characters. And really fantastic. Again, great idea. Also because the group members were all male, and so they imagined themselves as thinking and speaking in the voices of the children. And I think they're better men as a result of this. They imagine what it's like to, they understand something about female point of view now. They also created, by the way, their own trailer, which is really fantastic. Maybe later on I'll play this.
You can show anything you like.
Okay. This one is a comparison of the text, one of the texts that we read, again, the Odyssey, and movie adaptation of Brother, Where Art Thou, which I'm sure many of you know also. And this is a valuable project because the students, again, in class, we didn't have time to look at movie adaptations and really compare different genres. And this work also allowed them to think about interdisciplinary projects and also to gather skills in close reading, because analyzing the movie and the text next to one also allow them to close read. This video here is made by one of the students who is a composer. So she was intrigued by the sirens in the Odyssey. And what a cool idea, because we read in the Odyssey that the sirens are singing and the song is enchanting, but there's not really much else. So she started to think, okay, what could the sirens sound like? And so she created a script, a musical script. And so if you want to know what the sirens sound like, this is, maybe, should I play this a little bit? You want to hear it? You want to hear the sirens? How do I adjust this from here? And then she also created the video, also the collage of images of sirens.
Sorry, I can only bring it up so far.
Yeah, it's a soft recording also, so maybe that's why. And so her next step is to have some students actually perform it and record it. Okay. This one. This one. all the images here that you see, again, are done by one of the students. And here we see a poem, a letter, and a narrative piece that all reflect on one of the characters, the Medea. And this is a great project also because it gives us a totally different understanding of what that character is like. She's such a problematic character, but through reading what the students came up with, you actually start to look at this character also from a different point of view. So beautifully done. This one, again, imaged by one of the students. And let me show you how this works here. So what this group did, they combined ideas from the Symposium by Plato and from the Bible, again, 2 texts that we read, and they imagined themselves as Job, Abraham, Adam, and who's the fourth one? There's a fourth one too, yeah? And so all these figures from the Bible come together and they have a symposium on the love of the Lord, yeah? And so they imagined the students imagined what these characters would have said about God. And the image here is really interesting also because the student who created this said that the task of having to imagine what these figures might have looked like is an interesting question. It made him go to the Bible and look for descriptions of these characters. And then it's like, well, how do you draw a painting of somebody who's like 600 years old? Is that like young or old according to the standards of the Bible? Yeah. So this one is again another comparison of like a Broadway movie adaptation and an interesting adaptation of a play. This one is, I had 2 groups who were really inspired by other kinds of work that was going on campus. So the students went to the art exhibit that focused on the work of RewirED, and they wrote a review of the exhibit or their own reflections. Another movie inspiration, and this is also based on the work of RewirED. Now this stopped working.
Doesn't scroll.
It does not scroll.
Okay. That's okay. We get
Yeah.
it there.
So this is what the students came up with, and I felt like they put a lot of effort and creative thought into this. And as a note of closing, I again want to emphasize something that the previous speaker said also, which is that none of this work would have been possible without the help of Michael Cinema, and he's a true, just a beautiful resource and an amazing mind and a great collaborator. So thank you very much. Questions now or later?
Oh, later is okay,
Later.
yeah. And this was done with a tool called Lucid Press. It's free, and we just built it in that. It's a free tool to use. And next. Next we have, from Teachers College, Dr. Christine Pawelski, someone who took, there was a series of lectures in boxes that was this close to just being lost, and Christine innovatively took those videos and digitized them and put them in a space. I'm going to let her talk about it, but it's a really awesome example of archiving. So Christine Pawelski, please.
If I can help get you this.
Yeah,
Stay up here to
of
help
course.
you with this.
Use this too if you'd like.
As everyone else has said, it's been exciting to work with Michael and teams. Sarah Heaney and Adrian is out there somewhere. To connect over the years, I've been intrigued with online learning forever, have experimented with hybrid, trying to infuse the real world into academia and academia into the real world in ways that really connect. And so it's been fun over the years, and it's been years that we've been playing with this kind of stuff. And so what I just wanted to share today was that all of us come to points in our career, in our work, that you reach dilemmas is what can you do? I'm a big technology supporter, but it's changing rapidly. It's not where we all want it to be, and it needs to be. And so one of the things that in some of the work I've done in online work was that we always ended with a major lecture series by my former sponsor of my dissertation over the years, an endowed lecture that was continuing. And we had boxes of various videos, CDs, mini DVs, everything that ended up in some of our research offices. And what was exciting about this last real lecture at the end of all of our courses was that it was an opportunity to bring alum together, to bring the community together, to share the scholarship, to make those kind of connections. As I say, we do a lot of work online. I think that's the work of the future. Those of us who are in projects and do research, a lot of it is online with diverse audiences, and it can't be in an academic kind of way. It's got to be a little bit more exciting and glitzy, and you have to do it. But how do you share some of that once the lecture is finished? We had very successful lectures for 2 hours. Everybody came, we videoed all of this, lots of conversation, and then it ended up in a box. Maybe written up, maybe not. Many people never read it. Even my students were being challenged to read it. And yet, so it was as our more and more faculty retired, challenges and changes in priority, what role could this still live, ongoing lecture serve for future students, for faculty? Could we resurrect it or do something with it before it got lost? And to move to the next slide, I just...
Or you can use your pointer.
Okay. So our story was that, all right, so we listed all the lectures. We had a great website. They were all there when it occurred, all of that. We had our box. We organized it. We put all the CDs, videos in all of that. And it was like 13 years that we're still going to be endowed. So we began to look, well, what's in the box? Could we analyze and see, are these still relevant topics? Are they important? Well, we put together this whole database. That's, oh my God, we have articles. We have researchers who are still alive. The issues are still real. Oh my, new students coming in, new faculty. This needed to be shared. What do you do? And so, fortunately, I knew Michael. We had worked together forever, came to the center, and they came up with ideas to how do you pull this together. So Sarah Heaney was on board at that time, Michael was. I lucked out and got a graduate assistant to help me, so we needed to keep these lectures. They couldn't be downloaded, they were endowed. You couldn't just, sort of disperse them. So I needed them to be real in some way. So they came up with Wiki Scholars. And so we put together what became known as the Blackman Lecture Series with an open source URL that anyone in this room can use, with all the videos protected, with everything there in place and Michael, if you could get me to the Wiki Scholars so I don't screw up this. It's right at the top, yeah. So this is live, and you just go to the URL, and you will see that this includes, so we put together all the little videos of Len Blackman, his family, what it was all about, why is it important, what did this do. The videos are all there, and if I scroll down, just... All right, okay, just to do that. We put it all, we had it in all little pieces. That was the problem and challenge of archiving. You find stuff, how can you make it available? How can it, for everyone to see, not just if you're a Columbia or a Teachers College student, or you have the right URL or the login. I couldn't deal with that. Nobody, it's like, I can't even remember it myself. So could we do this, because this was all fabulous kind of material. And Len and his family were thrilled because they believed strongly. He was one of the major researchers that started the Research and Development Center in Special Education many, many years ago, was still endowing a yearly lecture series, new students coming in, new faculty. And so what we did with the help of Michael and team was then we put together this whole series of the 13 lectures of this year, just to model it, just to see, would this work? Could we do it? Could we create a format that would make sense? And so we put it in this, and it's so cool because, I mean, one of the exciting things, and this is the one I've used and many people have used many times, is this one. Because one of the major professional organizations in special education, the Council for Exceptional Children, began at Teachers College 80 years ago with people in a bar saying, we've got to pull people together. There's these kids who are vulnerable. Many students coming in now have no clue that the halls that they are in all started special ed, right? Faculty don't even remember this. New faculty coming in. And so we had to, I felt committed to sort of archive. And as I said, I love this. And in 2002, we had the opportunity to sort of do that. And so we have all the lectures of those folks who were there back in 2002. And we had these little video clips and of all of the major speakers from who started the legislation, the policy at that time. Again, can be shared around the world. We have now faculty who have graduated doctorates, are teaching. They were here, they can share that. Special ed, we wonder where it's going. Well, that's where it started. That was the part of it. That was like, what can we do? And then we also, as a part of this wiki, which was really cool, as I said, I've been sort of playing with technology for a long time. But it was like, oh my, I've learned so much over the last several years from the team about what we can do to sort of make this stuff come alive in ways. So we have audio clips of some folks who started learning disabilities, were involved in physical disabilities, started all of those. So we have their live and real kind of, it's like, oh my gosh. So new students, new faculty have that opportunity to go back, share it with people. And I think what has been exciting, so we have, of course, we have ideas on this about how can you use this material, what kind of, and if I can get back to where I am. One of the wiki pages is, let me get this to work. Anyways, it's on the wiki, and if you go back, it gives you ideas about how to start, where can you use these, ideas of infusing them into a course, contact information, all of that. Now, if I go back to your wiki, yeah, that would be great. It was like, so we put it all together this past summer, thanks to the help of the center, and I said, okay, but now, can we pilot this with some current faculty? Can we see if this would work? Does pulling this kind of archiving, I get it, can I share it with somebody else? And so our story continued, and then we had a brand new faculty who was coming from the University of Arizona. She was teaching all the brand new majors in special ed. She got it, she understood that, oh, I could use this, infuse these. So day one, she decided that first, because she wasn't here for the 13 years at Teachers College, she wanted to see what that was about. And so she uses these lectures in her class to do the feedback with students so she can hear it. In spring, it'll go more online. And so she'll give assignments for these courses because she'll know what the responses are. She's very familiar with that, and she can go back. And so Loudy would have loved to have been here today, but one of her kids has a birthday party, and she's making cupcakes for them. And I said, you could have come and share this. But she was very excited to be a part of it. And that was the pilot. We wanted to see, well, would this work? If we archived the materials, made it easily available, this kind of content, can I then pass it on to to other faculty, folks who have graduated, who are alums, who are teaching in New Jersey, in Liberia, in Egypt. This is the history with major researchers available to you. You don't need a log-on. It's there for you, that kind of scholarship. And it's that multimedia. It's not just reading in the textbooks. It's not. That's no longer the way to get the information across. And somehow we've got to figure it out. And so Laudy has been very excited to do it, and hopefully she will continue to do that. And I got so excited about this because I'm involved in child abuse and anti-bullying kind of issues, and we're collecting all of this kind of material. October was Anti-Bullying Month. We've got resources from the library, from our CIS department on cyberbullying, contacts with schools, all these little videos, mandated courses from the state on child abuse, on harassment and all of that. Can I share the content that we have that you can infuse that into those mandated? So it was like, oh my gosh, can I start a second wiki, Michael? Can we try to see if we can do this? So by the end of the semester, we'll have our second wiki together on the cyberbullying and the bullying issues. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We'll put together our resources for that. Again, it'll be the same kind of that you can infuse it into courses, make it a part of it, make it more real. And so the issue of blended learning, hybrid learning, taking the academic and real world, can we do it in a way that makes sense? And that's what's been exciting in working with the center. And so I'm thrilled to have been a part of this, continue to learn something new every time I connect with that. And again, the URLs are available, free, open source to anybody. And that's, I think, what the beauty is of all of that. So thank you. Onward.
Thank you very much, Christine. Last but not least, surely, we have Professor Ted Perlmutter, and he is doing some very interesting, innovative things with social media around conflict and negotiation and things like that. So, Ted, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
With a lovely microphone.
You just pull it out this way.
Okay. Always a tech problem. I guess what I'd like to do is first sort of locate myself, I guess, slightly outside of the CCNMTL community, because I really started this far before I sort of got here, although I've now been actually working with people on media threat and other issues and look forward to long collaboration. But I first started teaching with this, I guess, at the dawn of Facebook. And in fact, when I mentioned to my students that I actually knew that they had Facebook accounts, they all sort of giggled at me. When I said we were going to use social media in the classroom, I lost a third of my students. And when I gave my first presentation on something like this, there were 3 people in the room, and the technology didn't work at all. So there is progress in the world. So what I'd like to do, actually, can you sort of beep this? I'm not. And the other, actually no, I actually wanted just to go to the next page of the wiki. So the next, yeah. So just. Actually, the page after that. Sure. So actually, I'm teaching this in a course in a program in negotiation and conflict resolution, which is a master's program in continuing ed, and the course is called, sort of somewhat pretentiously, Conflict, Social Networks, and Communications Technology. And the idea was to give myself a sort of a license to pretty much do what I wanted to do. And what I discovered over time was, given that there was sort of a wide range of student interests, that there were 2 things that were sort of ubiquitous. One of which is the conflicts that people get into in social media, starting with email and going downhill from there. And then the second was to sort of say, well, how can we use social media as modes of conflict analysis? And this was sort of an interesting way to encompass sort of ranges of folks. And in the course of doing that, I sort of subjected or encouraged students to use a wide range of technology. And I'm really only going to talk, obviously, about one of them today. But it's sort of, in my way of looking at it, the idea is to sort of say, okay, what are all the kind of publicly available technologies that people can use? And this has a number of advantages, not least of which is that students continue to have access to all the resources that they've developed in the course of doing this, and it makes it, as was pointed out earlier, easily accessible to people outside of this. So all of my and the main project that I have people do is I have students blog. So I'm going to be talking about Storify, but I spend 80% of my time convincing students to sort of develop a voice in the public world. And I sort of came upon Storify, which is basically a kind of a social media tool for curating Twitter and other forms of social media in response to two things. One of which was in response to sort of trying to deal with ways of curating, ways of aggregating all of the content that's sort of out in the world and also that my students work with, and also sort of out of a challenge within the broader program, which is that the chair said, well, why don't we think about ways of having students sort of take what's in the classroom outside and bring stuff from the outside on in, what she modestly hashtagged ThinkCR, so think conflict resolution. And I realized sort of fairly quickly that the social affordances of Twitter are not really great for encouraging dialogue. How many people here actually either use Twitter or read tweets with any regularity? So I guess about half. Of my students, I would say that was probably about 10% or 20% when I got to, when we started with the class. And the efforts basically to sort of use Twitter in and of itself to do this was not highly successful, shall we say. And part of the reason is that, it's very hard to sort of have a dialogue in 140 characters. But when you sort of can aggregate that, when you can sort of curate that into something larger, it becomes a more interesting process. So you could sort of click me over to. So what I basically decided to do was to sort of use Twitter and then use Storify to bring in, as a way to sort of facilitate the beginning of a conversation with colleagues of mine who actually were working, literally in the Philippines at the time of this particular typhoon, and trying to sort of, give them sort of a live sense of what it meant to be, somebody working for the World Food Program on the ground who was sort of, Skyping in at 7 in the morning with all the chaos going on behind him. But to do that, I basically had students sort of, use this source, and I sort of started out the class and said, okay, you guys go out and say, what does the world look like if you're sort of aggregating social media? Because a lot of what the people who are on the ground are trying to do is to figure out how they can deal with all the media that's sort of coming on in. So quick forward, sort of one more slide there. So, you can sort of see the kinds of things that it really sort of enabled them to do. It really enabled them to sort of put themselves in some minor way in the position of the people who were out there. And it also enabled them to understand what each other was thinking, and it also gave me some interesting insights into what their issues were. So why don't we click on over to the actual site there? Yeah, the first Storify. No, the one that, actually the earlier one. The first one. So what this particular Storify that I'm doing is actually a sort of a meta Storify. I mean, if you will, we're sort of talking about, sort of curation at multiple levels. And actually, before I started listening to my colleagues here at CCNMTL, I thought actually curation was a somewhat pretentious term for the kinds of activities that we were engaged in. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that this is actually what we're doing. And when I sort of say there's kind of 4 levels of meta activity here, there is the tweet or the original blog post that people were accessing. There's the students' access of that. There is the Storify that I did about this, and then there is the Storify which I'm presenting now, which is my explanation of what I was doing. And you can sort of reason your way out from there. So just click on this sort of, leave it sort of on the state activity point. So what this enabled me to do was to sort of say, okay, you guys bring in the issues which you think are interesting, and I'll sort of bring forth my own sort of knowledge on this, because I've actually done, sort of a lot of work in kind of the mapping community, more on conflict prevention than on humanitarian stuff, but it's all this, you sort of all know the same people, and you all raise the same kinds of issues. So what I was able to do was to sort of integrate sort of their input and, sort of my concerns as a political sociologist on the fact that really, how this works really depends upon state capacity. And then the students brought in things which I hadn't really thought about in the ways that they did, which is they actually brought in some of the humanitarian concerns and some of the human protection concerns. And then so what happens is you end up with a document, a text which is sort of co-created at a certain level that represents both levels of concerns and sort of enables me to sort of integrate what I've done and to respond to and learn from what they've come to understand about all of this. So let me sort of click on back into, scrolling down actually a bit more. So just to sort of give some, some examples. I mean, this is really what student input looks like. So just stop there. Scroll down a little bit more, or scroll up a little bit more, actually. So anything place that lands on that's fine. So, I mean, this is sort of a student bloggers, a student tweet. Students tweet on this, they're sort of pulling out what's the government about, in other words, what are the kinds of resources that they're seeing. And so you get a very nice kind of graphic representation of the state of knowledge that's sort of out there. And there's also, I've sort of emphasized Twitter, but there's a wide range of resources that you can pull in. You can pull in videos, you can pull in you can pull in sort of, stuff which you blogged or they've blogged on these sorts of issues. So students really come to understand the kind of the complex interface and the fact that you're really dealing with a vast media ecology here, which is sort of one of the points that I always try to sort of press on this. Here you sort of get a student who's actually interested in Cyprus, who became particularly interested in sort of the protection of women issues in this. And this is again something I was aware of, but given what I was thinking about at the time, I would have never brought up. So just sort of flip back to the wiki.
Sure. And we'll go to the next door.
Yeah. We can go to the next door 5 actually. Yeah. No, actually. Let's go to that. So, this is literally what I had done for the class. So just scrolling down just a little bit more, and here you stop on recent maps. So here you get sort of all the kinds of content that's sort of available here. So scrolling down, we can do some look at the video, and you sort of see really that you're dealing with a sort of complex set of operations here. I'm not sure the video was actually going to work. So this is micro mappers, which is sort of a new technological approach there. Scrolling down to sort of say with my sort of skeptical person there, or the sort of the use of various other people on thinking about with social media and the kinds of conflicts that emerge. Anyway, a wide panoply of information sources, and it also I think really gets to the major point of the fact that if you're actually sitting there in the Philippines trying to do this, you are really suffering from the same sort of information overload and the same challenges of figuring out what is good information, what is real information that students are learning sort of in the classroom. So that's really sort of the thrust of the exercise and the way that I try to sort of tear down that wall between what goes on in the classroom and what it means to, as I said, be sitting there at 7 in the morning in the Philippines trying to figure out who you can reach and how you can reach them. So let me just go back to the wiki and sort of wrap up fairly quickly here, since I think I'm keeping people from coffee or drinks or food or something like that.
Next slide?
Next slide. So, to sort of summarize, I was actually intending to teach my students how to use StoreFi more actively, but I got sucked into working with MediaThread, which is an interesting venture, but maybe we'll talk about that next year. But I also discovered that there are a couple of other sort of interesting usage, one of which is purely as a kind of lecture format, i.e. you just sort of take the material that you're finding on the web and sort of can easily use that as a sort of a better and more live version of PowerPoint. And the second of which, and this was something I actually learned from Lucy, was that you can really use it very effectively to sort of summarize outside conferences. In fact, I was able to sort of do the equivalent of kind of live blogging conferences using this. Actually, one done by the Shoah Foundation on violence and media out in LA, and then 3 days later, something in Budapest, thinking about how you teach genocide prevention. So it's a very useful sort of flexible technology for that. The limitations and sort of challenges of it are are twofold. One of which is it really doesn't aggregate for more than 30 or 40 items. And the second thing is, while working with university technology has its own challenges, the challenges of working with public technology is that they have this delightfully bad tendency of stripping out some of the most useful things that you could use it for. So it used to be that if you actually searched within Storify for all the stuff you'd done on it with a specific tag, it went back a month or two. Now it goes back a week. So I'm sort of a fan of using public and commercially available tech for the reasons I specified, but it's not an unmitigated blessing, and that brings me back to the virtues of working with people who have a greater understanding of the needs of academics and the university.
Thank you all. Can we have one more round for everyone? Thank you very much for presenting. And our director, Associate Director Michelle Hall would like to say a few words before we close it for coffee. Michelle.
I promise I won't keep you very long. Very, very few words of thank you. What we saw today, I think, really is a celebration of the great work that everyone has put into this series this semester. RewirED keeps getting better, and it's really only because of the amazing faculty who show up, as well as our educational technologists. What I saw today in these presentations really exemplifies what this program is about and what our faculty development here at CCNMTL is really supposed to do. And so we heard about trying to solve large class problems with student content retention, teamwork, collaboration and encouraging creativity, pulling together amazing resources and tools like Storify and those wonderful creative newsletters in Lucid Press. Video is another theme that came up a lot, another tool that was used. Audience response system with learning catalytics. And this is really what we set out to do at the beginning of this program, was to really think about how to blend technologies with innovative teaching approaches to solve novel problems. And you've done it. These 4 examples show that we've done that. There are many other stories that we couldn't tell today, and this is also a celebration of all those other stories. So thank you all, 4 presenters. Thank you. Another thank you to those of you who came to 1 or all 8 of them. We want to thank all of you for coming. And this couldn't happen if we didn't have an amazing team. I have to end with thanking our educational technologists. We started off with Michael, it was the project manager for this effort, did an amazing job getting people in the room and working with the team of educational technologists to pull this off. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. We had Angie Lee. Is Angie here? Angie, stand up when I call your name. Angie presented our Activate session. We had Michael DeLeon on our video team, talk about video, produce. He's not here. Michael is on our video team. For present, we had Ashley Kingan and Andre LeBoy. They're both here. For drive the discussion, we had Kenny Hirschman. And Kenny, let people know who you are. Paul taught us about curation. I think Paul had to step out. And for build, we had Sarahini. Thank you very much, Sarahini. And then, of course, once again, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you again at our other events. We'll have other faculty development programs next spring, and we thank you for supporting us. Don't go away, though. We have coffee and cookies and conversation next door in 204. And those of you who are here, who we have certificates and gifts for, we'll do that right after. So thank you very much.